welcome back, and thank you for sticking through those commercial breaks. I am excited to introduce our guest now, Jimmy Song. Jimmy, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing
Oh,
well.
you're
How are you
muted.
guys?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, wait, no, there was lag. Ignore me. Uh, Jimmy, so I want to start with the question that I just ended the last segment with because there seems to be no adults in the room that can give us an answer to this. But what is your definition of a recession?
a recession? I mean, it's I don't know. There's some technical definition, but I don't really care to think too much about it. It's whenever it's trying to measure how bad people are feeling. I think people feel pretty bad already, so I don't know.
Interesting.
Um, and the thing is, like it's funny because there's like a whole like history of this stuff. They used to have these things called panics, right? Like in the late 1800s, used to be called panics, and this would be when stock market would go into a bubble, and then it would fall down, and they had like a whole bunch of them. And Herbert Hoover decided that that was like too loaded a term. So when in the 30s, there was that big stock market crash. He called it a depression as a way to avoid the term panic. Now, that depression, like lasted a really long time, and it also got a terrible reputation. So come later, they started using another word, and it's now recession. So I have a feeling that they're gonna play these word games again and come up with something other than recession to describe what's happening. But and they'll put some technical definition behind it and just say we're not going to use the word recession, or we're going to define it away and use some other word that will last some amount of time until at some point people associate bad things with that word, and then I think that's what's going to happen.
I actually appreciate that context because it helps us, I think, better understand that this playbook of moving the goalpost, changing the definition, and avoiding the word is it's actually something we've literally done 90 years ago. So I appreciate that context. While I may be in a panic and fury and give a shit about what goes on in the macro environment, what's been taking up your time? What is taking up your energy, and what are you focused on?
What's taking my energy? I just had a really long conversation with an altcoin podcast, and I just basically yelled at her for like an hour. So I still have a little bit of that energy of like just righteous indignation at like all things altcoin, basically. And it's like, but what about the metaverse? Don't we want to get away from Facebook? I'm like, no, because basically what you're doing isn't getting away from Facebook. It's just giving it to another company, and actually they don't have to deliver anything. So it's nothing like what you think it is. It's just like what? Like yeah, I think she realized she had a lot more homework to do. So it was an interesting conversation. So that I had that call like right before here. I have another call after and a call after. So it's all afternoon is Jimmy in front of the screen over and over again.
I don't want to upset you, but I'm genuinely curious. Like, uh, obviously, you're not a fan of the metaverse, but what was something beyond her metaverse comments that was just like so absurd that you hear not
Well,
just from her but other altcoiners?
it's this huge confusion around decentralization. She was like saying stuff like, it's not decentralized because some people own a lot of it. I'm like, that comes like straight from socialism. What makes you think that like it should be distributed equally or something like that? Of course people are going to go into it, the amount that you have reflects both your wealth and your conviction in this asset. Um, so it's there's a lot of like sort of hidden assumptions in questions like that, which you have to sort of unpack. And it was kind of fun trying to do that because ultimately, I think it comes from like a place of Marx or socialism or communism or whatever, thinking that it's not fair because these people got in early. No, they got in early because they were convicted in it. There's lots of people that didn't, that have known about Bitcoin since 2011, still don't own any, like Peter Schiff and other people. So it's thinking about just sort of like how to frame things. Like the message that I keep coming back to is that you know, there's no need for a token in any of these projects. You could just use Bitcoin and do the project that way, but they keep adding tokens for the ostensible purposes of funding this project, but really ends up being just like suck money in from retail. And that's the unfortunate reality that we live in.
I mean, you've been around in this space and in this world much longer than I have, and one of the statements I continue to hear is like these bad ideas are not going to stop popping up, and it's more on us to sort of us being Bitcoiners to really try to not destroy is a little too aggressive, but really try to beat up and negate some of the bullshit claims that these bad ideas, these altcoins and shitcoins that pop up continue to share. But ultimately, like they may never go away. So what is actually the solution here? Because at a certain point, we can't just keep driving ourselves crazy. Some people are just gonna get scammed. Some people want the easy solution. You talk to most people who invest more heavily in altcoins than Bitcoin, and you start to understand their values are rooted around, I want to get rich. And it's not an understanding of what actually money is. It's just this idea of, well, this guy got rich investing in some crypto, and so I'm going to do this. Where do you think the fault is in the hands of the people who make these things, or the fault is in the people who are going out and trying to buy these shit coins?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little of both, but I would place much more blame on the people creating these tokens and pretending that they're something that they're not. And they're like rent seekers to the nth degree because they don't create anything, and they collect lots of money, and they're being their own central bank and getting away with it, which is honestly rather sad. But this is kind of what's been happening in this space for quite a while, and like what can we do? And that's a really good question, because the argument keeps being made to me that really you should be a lot nicer, and you're turning off a lot of people with your attitude and stuff like that. And it's like, well, here's what's wrong with the frame that you're coming from, because essentially what you're saying is, if I were nicer, that if I somehow you know acted in a way that you know would make you feel more comfortable with Bitcoin, not because you verified it yourself, but because of my personality, then you're going about like financial investment all wrong. I don't want those people in Bitcoin. The people that come in just because I'm nice, because there are plenty of people that will be nice. In fact, there's lots of them right now. They would love to take your money by being nice to you and scam you out of your of whatever wealth you have.
Mashinsky.
And that's the sad. Yeah, yeah, and this is something that like their frame of reference is basically everything is political. And this is the article that I'm working on this week, which is that when you have fiat money, literally everything becomes political, and everyone thinks of everything in a political way. So what we're being told essentially is that you need more support for your coin. You need more people backing it, and what you really need to do is win over everybody that's out there, as if it's like a political vote or something like that. And the thing that I'm trying to convey is that that's not how the laws of economics work. It's not. It's tempting to think that it's just political, and whoever is in charge gets to make the rules, and that's it. But talk to any country that's experiencing hyperinflation. That's not how things work. People are going to find alternatives because there are certain rules in economics, laws of economics that are as hard as nails. They're like the laws of physics. People prefer to store value in things that won't degrade, right? And they prefer the most liquid asset rather than a less liquid one, if they're the same price and utility. So I mean, like there are things like that which I don't think people understand. They think money is just political and that's it. And what you need is a lot of support. And my thing is that that's not money at all. What you want to do is make the argument that this is good money, and then let them go do whatever they want. Because if they're won over because of a political program, then they're just as likely to abandon you whenever the political winds change. And those are not the people that you want. And but that's how it works in politics, right? Where you have to get the support of everybody, and you know that's what gets you to win. um Especially in a democracy where majority rules or whatever. um and this is a hard thing to sort of get people to really believe, because they don't want to believe it. They want to believe that the people in power have all of that control, and that they're comforted to some degree that, okay, well, if the Fed does this, or if the chairman does this, or the treasury secretary does this, then we'll be okay. And that it's really just a vote for prosperity or poverty, and it's really the fault of the opposition. That's not how it is. We've been spending way too much money, way more than we have. We've destroyed the manufacturing base and everything else, mostly because of fiat money, not because of a particular party or anything. And we've spent way too much on war and all this other stuff. So the debt that we have, and the sort of situation we find ourselves in, doesn't lend itself to just sort of like a political solution. Not that's not the problem that we have. And this is something that's difficult for a lot of people to hear, because what they want to hear is, hey, you vote for me and everything will be okay. Or you vote for, like they think like buying Bitcoin is like a vote for Bitcoin. And if enough people get on board with Bitcoin, then everything will be okay. I mean, things will be much better under a Bitcoin standard, but it doesn't. It's not a political thing. It's not about getting enough people in so that we suddenly take over the world or whatever. That's inevitable if you study the laws of economics, unless something like 10x better comes along or something. Like that. That's something people have a difficult time understanding. It'd be like falling from a plane and thinking that by voting to not die when you fall, like that, or having a majority vote that you not die when you fall, that somehow that would save you. That's not how things work. Laws of physics just are a certain way. The laws of economics are a certain way. You don't need to like get a political majority. It's in fact we're a tiny minority right now, and we're still able to make lots of waves and affect stuff. And that's really the big thing that we have to get people to see. Or I mean, the faster people see that, the better it'll be.
So let's maybe unpack this a little bit, because I think there's this notion, and we had this conversation with CK, and I know that he's going around banging this drum a lot, that most Bitcoiners are just not not bullish enough. And
Mhm.
there's like this almost instinctive hedge. And like, I'll be honest with you, I prefer to be paid in fiat. I convert my fiat to Bitcoin based on sort of how I want to live my life. And I know that that's like Jimmy, I might have like lost 10 points in your mind right now and you may never respect me again, but that's just the God's honest truth from my perspective. That's not the case for everyone. Different people have sort of different systems that they have created, but that idea that I have even any fiat whatsoever, that is me being bearish. What is sort of your stance on this? How much is over exuberance? Like in a conversation I recently had with American Hodl, this idea that, plebs think that, oh, if I get my half a Bitcoin, then like I'm gonna have my castle in Europe and my beachfront property. Like what is over exuberance to the point of unrealistic versus what is actually like within the realm of possibility of how far reaching and how much this can encompass and grow into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have an answer for that. I because like this is sort of like society level change. Who knows what how things will shake out. What we do know is fixed supply, increasing demand. So, what will you be able to buy at that point? Like, I don't know. That's like one variable we don't know. We also don't know what you're gonna want at that point, right? Like, this is something that we talk about a lot is how Bitcoin changes you. Like, you start wanting different things. You might have gotten in because you wanted like a Lambo or something, but eventually you realize, you know what, I don't really want a Lambo. Like, your low time preference behavior sort of mindset like changes what you want too. So, how much is enough? I don't know. They're like two variables that are sort of like changing at the same time. And where do they meet, right? Like, what's possible for you to get with Bitcoin is, or what's going to make you happy or whatever. Like, that's really the question. And I think what will make us happy as we go into a lower time preference mindset will require less sort of immediate gratification. But at the same time, like, the prices of everything will fall in terms of Bitcoin, and they're kind of related because the more Bitcoiners there are, and especially for those of us that have been in it for a while, yeah, you're not impulsively spending anymore, right? Like, or if you do, it's like for a small amount. You're not like going out and getting a new car because you're feeling depressed or something. Like, that's not what you tend to do once you've been in Bitcoin for a while. So, enough of that, and prices start to lower for that reason too. So it's I don't know what's realistic, and I don't know what will satisfy you either. But both those things are sort of in flux.
That's fair. I do think there is a degree in which we have to take ownership over what it is we want, but at the same time I think we have been so heavily influenced by our culture and by our decisions that like most people have just lost that line of who it is they actually are. What are the things they value and need versus what are the things that you watch TV and you're like, well, that looks dope. I want that. Mind you, I watched Johnny Tsunami when I was what 4 years old, and since then, snowboarding has been my fucking identity. I stand by it and I love it. um,
Mm. Mm.
I want to get a sense from you, Jimmy, of like we've started to see some of these quote unquote heroes in the Bitcoin space really fall. Just today, now you have Pomp coming out and saying that his Better Business show is no more. Um, I'm curious if you think that there's still more of this sort of. I want to phrase this very carefully. Um, is there going to be more capitulation of these quote unquote Bitcoin heroes before we see a new run up, or do you think we've started to finish the purge?
Uh, that's a good question. But I will say though that in bear markets, it's very hard to be just a pure influencer, which unfortunately a lot of these people are. Like, the thing that you need to do as a quote unquote influencer is, your expertise is in marketing. right? Like that's how you make your money. And the thing is, there it's always going to be more lucrative to market in the altcoin sphere than in Bitcoin, because there's no pre-mined tokens or anything like that for you to go and grab. Um, and you're living a lot more honestly, I think, in Bitcoin, and a lot more fraudulently in altcoins. But let's face it, you're going to make more money doing it in altcoins. That seems to be what's happening with a lot of these influencers, where it's getting painful. They've sort of established the cred in Bitcoin, but then as things are getting worse, they're finding that, like, the Bitcoin sponsors aren't really there, or they're starting to cut back. So they're getting increasingly desperate because they've gotten used to a certain amount of income and stuff. And this is where you start to fall and start going altcoin or whatever. Now, I mean, the people that have quote unquote fallen, I think, have always had a little bit of that altcoin streak the entire time. And there's a reason, I think. I remember talking to Tone Vays a while back, and he got into the space in 2013, and he was like, basically, if you are non-technical and a Bitcoin, and like a Bitcoin influencer in 2013, he was like, every single one of them went to an altcoin. Every single one, like, among the non-technical people. And at the time, he said, well, Trace Mayer was the one exception. And of course, we know what happened to Trace. So, like, there's something about, like, having marketing as your expertise, which doesn't lend itself to staying, a Bitcoin maximalist for that long, because it's just too easy to be tempted by something else. And this honestly is what happened to Roger Ver, thinking that you're the reason for a lot of Bitcoin success and that you deserve more. You get into sort of maybe an entitlement mindset of thinking, well, I have all these followers and I do all this stuff, and I should get paid more for what I do. And honestly, that's been the story of a lot of these people. They grow a following in Bitcoin, and then they'll go do an altcoin, and then they'll make a bunch of money defrauding people. I mean, I don't necessarily I don't necessarily think that's gonna be uh the model going forward, because I think people are starting to wise up. But I kind of get what's happening. It's all the incentives are off because of all these altcoins that continue through. Have Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of money in their treasury and they're able to use it.
If you'll entertain me, we pulled up on the screen a comment by Yellow where I don't know if this is a true story or not, but did you and Tone just go at it with Roger Ver? And like,
Hmm.
can you
Well, so
share the
I
story?
I was on the yeah. I mean, that was like the weirdest conference I went to in my life. But it was a Mediterranean cruise that left from Barcelona. And I was asked to speak at it. I'm like, cruise maybe. And they're like, yeah, these other people are coming. I'm like, okay, well, if you want some ratings or whatever, or something that people talk about, put me and Roger on stage and we'll have a debate. They were like, oh, great idea. And they got Roger Ver to agree, and it was going to be me and him and all that. And I wanted just like a Lincoln Douglas debate, like, just, okay, make your points and then go and then make your points. And of course, Roger didn't prepare anything. I told him about all this. I said it multiple times, and I prepared like a 6-page dossier of all the points I was going to make. I posted it on Medium shortly after. He just didn't prepare anything, so he basically didn't say much other than, I don't know, just random, like, diatribes that didn't make any sense. So, I mean, towards the end, it just became sort of like evident he wasn't going to say anything or make actual arguments. He was just going to go on a diatribe. So I left, and Tone took over, and they did some more. It made the I think the Daily Mail ended up writing about it. And there's like multiple videos of that on YouTube. So, and I published exactly what I said and what I prepared on Medium, so it's not like there's anything there to hide. But yeah, that was a really weird conference. I also met John McAfee at that time on that cruise. There, it was like such a strange cruise because nobody knew like who's Coinsbank that's putting this on. It's like some Russian outfit or something. It's like, and did anyone actually pay to come on the cruise? Because it was like so many people that got on for free. I'm like, what's going on? And of course, there were the Ukrainian models that were there, which was very weird because like you go to a Bitcoin conference, you don't see that many women, period, right? And on this one, there was like clearly like 30 women that were very attractive that were wearing kind of skimpy outfits. And being a cruise, there were a bunch of people that brought their wives and girlfriends, and they were like pissed off that who are these women? And they didn't even speak English, and it was just very strange. And somebody told me they saw these women just like board the cruise like all together at once, like right before it left. So it was really sketchy. Yeah, and that was the cruise. I gotta say though that was good for me because I didn't want to have anything to do with what was going on. That was just it was the place was just sort of like very hedonistic. With the kind of people that were on there. So I was like, I'm not into any of this stuff. I'm a family man. I have a wife and kids. I'm just gonna stay in my room and eat steak, for dinner. That's it. So what I did was I locked myself in the room, ordered coffee and tea every like hour or so, and I sat there and wrote Programming Bitcoin. I think I did like 5 chapters in those 3 days where I didn't go to anything. I just sat there and wrote. And, like the only thing that I showed up for was what I was contractually obligated to do, which was the debate with Roger Ver. Did that, and that was it. Yeah. So that's my story.
I just found the Daily Mail article, which I posted in the comments. I was while you were telling the story, I found like pictures and the video as well. And just seeing the way this stage is in front of a fucking pool and you trying to tell Roger, like, sit down. Like, what are you doing? Sit down. This is
Yeah.
honestly, I know what I'm watching tonight. That is, oh my God, Yellow, you are disgusting. But also, like, I think it's beautiful that, in a shitty situation, like you put in the work and you gave the universe Programming Bitcoin, which has been instrumental in countless people's journey into this space and learning how to further develop and build off of it. Um, to to come back full circle now, I want to know, and like maybe let's just do a little bit of a lightning round here. Some of these questions I know the answers to, so just entertain me, please. I'm going to throw maybe a word or a phrase out at you and tell me if it belongs or should be incorporated into Bitcoin in any way. And the easy one to start with is NFTs. Do they have a
No,
place in Bitcoin? No.
no, no. I mean, it's weird because like people like bring up NFTs with me as if they're something brand new. And I'm like, dude, I coded this in 2013. We had it on Bitcoin in 2013. It's a color coin. I was a color coins developer. I made this, and I knew then that it was like, you know it could be just a digital thing, in which case it's completely useless, or it can represent something in the real world, in which case you run into the Oracle problem. So either way, it doesn't work. And I concluded that way back when. but people make it out to be, oh, it's this new innovation, blah blah blah. And didn't it start in Bitcoin? I'm like, yeah, yeah, I was one of the people that made it. And I came to the conclusion that it's really stupid. So yeah, that's something that people think is something really cool and innovative. It boggles the mind how much of a reality distortion field VCs and marketers are able to pull over the public.
Anytime anyone tries to show me their NFT, I try to take a screenshot of it. I've gotten punched a couple of times, and honestly, I just laugh. Um, the next one for you are, you know, an altcoin built on top of Bitcoin. Is that anything that we need, do you think?
No, I mean, what are you using it for? Like, the question always is, like, when somebody describes to me a project as, hey, like, we're gonna do this. I'm like, great, okay. Why do you need a token? Why aren't you using, dollars or Bitcoin? Why do you need a token? Oh, it's the fund does. No, 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 no. That's a different issue. If you're expecting people to give you a donation, like, you're basically trying to print your own money. That's a whole separate thing. Then, like, and I've never gotten a satisfactory answer for any of that. Never ends up being anything. So yeah, I don't see a reason for altcoins on Bitcoin or elsewhere.
Rather than altcoin, I'm curious your thoughts on a stable coin built on top of Bitcoin.
So I wrote a tweet a while back. I think stable coins are poorly implemented Xiaomi and eCash. So if you know what Xiaomi and eCash is, this is what Fedimint is like sort of taking advantage of. This is David Chang came up with this, I think, in like 1981 or something like that, which actually wasn't too far away from like the discovery of asymmetric cryptography. Diffie-Hellman, I think, wrote their paper in like 1976 or 70. I forget, in the mid 70s somewhere. And like 6 7 years later, he came up with this eCash concept. And and that's basically you have a central entity, but you have privacy for the customer. So instead of checks going all over the place and the bank knows exactly where you spent the money and who spent what or whatever, instead of having that log stay with the bank, instead you get essentially eCash and you can spend it or whatever, and you still have to trust the central entity, but ultimately you get privacy around it. And that's how I see stable coins, or at least back stable coins. Algorithmic stable coins are a complete like disaster, and we saw what happened with Luna, for example. Um, the But Xiaomi and eCash is a useful concept, and you get all of these privacy properties and so on. I think that's ultimately what a back stable coin is. It's Xiaomi and eCash, except you're unnecessarily putting it into a Bitcoin blockchain, or some other blockchain, which it's sort of like a Dino thing, but they want to be able to say that it's quote unquote decentralized, but you have an issuer of the token. You have somebody that's in control of it, or whatever. Really, what they should be doing is issuing Xiaomi and eCash, and then go from there. But probably from a regulatory perspective, it's more advantageous to call it like a stable coin with a blockchain or something like that. But it's just a poorly implemented eCash. I think eCash would be way better because you get way more privacy and there's no blockchain necessary. You just have a history of receipts for a particular coin, or the eCash that you have, and then you can redeem it for the actual dollars. I mean, that's how it should work. And really, that's what Tether and USDC and all these other back dollar instruments are. Is you have a central issuer, and people are trading it, and then like somebody gets to redeem or whatever. Xiaomi and eCash, that I mean, and it's superior because of all of the privacy properties that you get out of it. It's crazy to me that you know um, this the stable coin thing. is being touted as like something that needs to happen on a blockchain or on top of some blockchain network. It doesn't. It absolutely does not.
I want to build off of that before we go on to the next one. But from the sounds of it, it almost feels like you would agree that allowing some sort of a Bitcoin standard where you could issue money on top of Bitcoin that was potentially redeemable if not for whatever token you want to issue on top of Bitcoin or for the Bitcoin itself, but at least there's this accountability because unlike in our current banking systems where a bank can just tell you they got $1 million, wink wink, when like they may only have 100K in the vaults, they can't really do that with Bitcoin. The UTXO in theory should be able to be traced back to them, and we would be able to see like, hey, you're issuing more than you actually have. This doesn't work. Do you think something like that where the global banking systems or countries, if we still have those in this next iteration of society, were to say, hey, we hold X number of Bitcoin and we are going to issue Y number of our currency on top of it that is pegged and backed by Bitcoin? Is that something that is necessary? Will happen? What are your thoughts on that type of a scenario?
I don't really see. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question because I think what you're really asking is about scalability, and how much centralized entities will be relied on for that sort of thing. I mean, I I don't know. I think you get to be your own bank with Bitcoin, and that's a major feature. But who knows how the market will
Let me
do it?
rephrase it.
But,
Rather than like, will this happen? Is this a necessary thing? Would it be necessary to have that invention created on top?
mm, I mean, you already have proof of reserves and things like that. So that that already exists. And I think Kraken's shows that every once in a while. I know Obi's old exchange CoinFloor did that on a regular basis. So yeah, I mean it already exists and it already kind of happens. But I don't know if these exchanges will necessarily implement them. I think most of them don't because they like the privacy. Of not letting the public markets know how much Bitcoin they have and so on. So yeah.
Not financial advice, but get your Bitcoin off of exchanges. May or may not be a Bitcoin bank run one day. The
Mm.
next one I had for you was side chains. How necessary is this in the Bitcoin ecosystem?
I don't think it's necessary, but I mean, yeah, I don't think it's necessary, and we haven't really found the way to do it in a decentralized way. That's kind of the problem. You know, if it was actually decentralized, then I think we would work. There would be some value, especially like because you don't have you're not writing to the main chain, but the decentralization is actually kind of a critical thing. Otherwise, if it's not decentralized, then why do you need a sidechain? Just be the central entity or whatever. So it's kind of a weird mixture. If you can do side chains with uh, you know with decentralization, then maybe that would work. But if you can't, then I am not really sure I see the point. But regardless, I don't know if it's necessary.
I'm only saying this, and I swear to fucking God, Yellow, if you're teeing me up to look like an asshole, I will find you. Um, what about Web3 apps that don't need a token?
Yeah, it's called Web 5, right, or whatever. Yeah, I there's already sort of like a decentralized ecosystem kind of brewing on top of Lightning, and you don't need a token. I think they're showing that, and that this is actually how you make like a decentralized thing. BitTorrent I think was like an early example of how to do that on the at the digital level, uh, in the digital sphere. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we'll see more of it. But whether there's enough of an appetite to make it like a sustainable business, I don't know. That's an open question.
All right. What is your opinion on Paleo's Keat?
You mean Paolo?
Paolo. Yes, thank you. I don't know why. I literally
I
look at
haven't
this.
looked into it too much. I did talk to him about it, and he told me it's really cool, and you can do like video calls over a decentralized in sort of like a decentralized way, so directly peer to peer, which I think would be good. Yeah, hard to say because I haven't played with it or anything yet.
Is there anything that you're actually excited about keeping an eye on as it's being developed? You brought up Udi, they had Fedimints come out recently. Is there any sort of development layer two or above that you're like, this is something people should be paying more attention to, but they're not?
I think OB will be very upset at you that you called him
I'm
Udi.
an asshole. I'm such an asshole. Fuck. My bad. I'm so
Wrong
sorry.
people, and wrong
One letter makes a big difference.
vowels. Well, it's two UDI versus OBI, so yeah.
It's one letter.
uh Two O
Oh,
and
D.
O
Wow.
versus U, and then D versus
I'm
B.
gonna go
Like, you
just
just got it
dig
wrong,
dig my
dude.
ditch down there. So I'm
I mean, Fediment is interesting, and I think I'll have to study it a little more. And I did just record a podcast with them, which will probably go out next week. So there's that. Yeah, I would say that a lot of the developments are around some of the apps that are being built on top of Lightning. For me, that's like what L3 is, right? The layer three stuff. And I'd like to see more of that happen, and we'll see where it goes.
Is there anything that you want to tell the creators of to stop making? And you are well within your right to just spend this time telling Vitalik to go jump in the same ditch that I'm gonna jump into once we finish this stream.
I mean, a lot of the entire altcoin space, and a lot of central banks and their money printing. I would like for them to all stop, but I mean, they're not going to, because the system's set up in a way to benefit them hugely at the expense of everybody else. It's going to take a lot more moral outrage from the right people in order to stop them.
Jimmy, before we wrap up here, do you want to tease a little bit of what you're working on next? What we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, it's an article on politics and how everything's become political. I kind of mentioned it a little bit before, and yeah, everything has become political, and everything is looked at through a political sphere, as if you can sort of change reality by voting for it, and it's kind of gone like to a degree that I don't think any of us could have imagined even 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, people are saying, all of X is a construct and Y is a construct, or whatever. And that's just causing people to live in more fantasy and not reality. And, you know, um, and we get craziness like we've had recently. So that's what I'm going to write about. I've started putting together some ideas, but I haven't finished the draft yet. So I have to put it in future tense what I'm actually going to do. So
You hear that, Pete Rizzo? The article's coming. Just be patient. Um, without giving away anything in the article, like what was the one topic that you're like, this is so stupid that it's now become a political issue? And I'm also a little hurt that what you're implying is that my vote doesn't matter.
Your vote doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Since when?
Uh, no, I mean it matters in a block. Once you have like 10,000 people or something like that, you can affect some stuff, especially if you live close to each other and are in the same voting district. Of course, it's going to matter. But like any particular individual, it's your vote matters only to the degree that you can influence other people to vote in the same direction. So, um, yeah, hard to say. What politically sort of like motivated me, but I would say like the last couple of years, just all the different things that have been going on. And just studying this stuff, noticing just how political everything is. Like, your typical job is largely political. And we make fun of, the Soviet Union for, the political uh, agent or something. Like everything had to have like a political guy, right? Like even like a battalion of soldiers, you had like a political officer with everything, right? Like in a sense, like our current situation is everyone's like both a political officer and like an employee at the same time. You're not really ever allowed to get away from politics, at least in a normal corporate job. um and that's the case in almost every community and stuff. It's this feeling that if you get a majority, you can do anything you want, including subvert the laws of the universe, which is impossible, but that's how people are thinking, that majority is God and that's it. So yeah, there's something about that I really want to dig into and explore and write about.
Well, people hate how much I actually enjoy just the drama that is the US political system. So I cannot wait for that. I have a weird thing that just came across my Twitter feed that I kind of want to just share with you. Um,
Hmm.
Ethereum breaking news that Ethereum developers have announced a merge date for the Goerli testnet, August 6th to the 12th. This is the last step before the merge. Um, I mean, this feels irrelevant. Is Let me put it like this: what are the odds that you would put on A, the Ethereum merge even happening, and B, how relevant is this? Is this just more spin by the Ethereum contingency to make it seem like they're moving things forward?
Yeah, I have no idea. Maybe they'll actually release something, and I'm sure they'll run in. I mean, it's like any software engineering project. You're gonna have to test stuff and find things that break and blah blah blah. The thing is, their project's so complicated. I mean, I imagine the testing phase is gonna take way longer than they probably think. But whatever the case, once they do switch to proof of stake, if they ever switch to proof of stake, then I think it'll be relevant for Bitcoin in that the proof of stake stuff versus proof of work, that's going to take on another, you know, level of discourse or like loudness and marketing and stuff like that. And we're probably going to get attacked at the regulator level that proof of work is wasting electricity or whatever. And yeah, I fully expect that to become a narrative in the next, after they do that, because this is what they've been wanting to do, and this is something that Vitalik's been talking about from the very beginning. And yeah, I can't wait for that fight. I expect that fight to actually really separate the two, and because at that point, like, altcoins have been trying to ride Bitcoin's coattails forever. um, and uh, and with something like this, I think it puts a clear separation. and maybe puts a lot more daylight between Bitcoin and altcoins. And if that happens, then great. I think Bitcoin, you know, will take on this enemy, and this is what's in the history of Bitcoin. Whenever Bitcoin has vanquished an enemy, it tends to go up in price by a significant amount. So that's what I would expect.
I look forward to meeting you on the battlefield when we finally get to destroy all of the bullshit ETH FUD that
Mm,
somehow impacts Bitcoin in any way. Uh,
mm.
Jimmy, where can people stay up to date with what you're doing? Where can people find your interview with OB? Where can people know what you're cooking up next?
Yeah, pay attention to my Twitter at Jimmy Song and my newsletter, jimmysong.substack.com. Between those two things, I announce everything. My interview with Obi will come out next Thursday, probably, and yeah, the one that I released today was with Anna Chakovich, who's part of the Anti-Corruption Foundation. She works with Alexei Navalny, the main opposition leader, who's in prison right now in Russia. So that was in itself interesting. But yeah, the OB one with Fediment, that's coming out next week. And we talked about a lot of stuff. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for joining us. Be sure to give him a follow. Be sure you follow myself, P, Chris, and the Video Bitcoin Twitter account. Please make sure you also unfollow CK Snark for the sake of our fun little internal bet. I'm going to just wrap here. Have a good one.